For our COBT viewers and listeners, it's Maynard and Mike here on Thursday afternoon with something super special. We're going to get to visit with Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison. She's a good friend. She's been kind to us over the years. And as we've gotten to know her, we've also gotten to know the KBH Energy Center at Texas. Jack Balagia is here as well. He's the executive director. We love what's happening at the center. It's a real a collection and collision of a lot of great forces around energy, around business, around engineering, around national security. Senator Hutchison was not only the senator from the great state of Texas, but she was also the ambassador to NATO. And so anytime we're with her, we love hearing her thoughts on geopolitics and the various stresses in the world. So let me just stop and say, Senator, we're so happy to have you. Jack, thank you so much for joining. This is going to be a great conversation.
Thanks for giving us this time on your wonderful podcast.
Well, you are too kind. We're going to talk today, Mike, a lot about the markets and geopolitics, and also the conference that's coming up at the KBH Energy Center, September 12th. But what would you tell us is going on in the world before we jump in?
Yeah, Maynard, today is a bit nutty, to be honest with you. Everybody was looking at the PPI number today. Remember, the CPI came out on Tuesday. It was in line with expectations. Interest rates went down. The market went up. Expectations were PPI was going to print pretty tame again today. And it was a huge increase in PPI. It looks like some of those tariff increases are now starting to roll through. As you recall, PPI numbers tend to be more of a forward-looking. CPI is more of a backwards-looking. So I think people are starting to think, what is the CPI going to look like before the next September FOMC meeting? So just to put it into context, expectations for that number of PPI was 0.2. It came in at 0.9. That's the biggest increase since July of 2022. So it's been a long time. And so that kind of shocked markets. Why I said it was nutty is because interest rates, a 10-year bond is up only around 4 or 5 basis points. That surprised me. And broader equity markets are kind of sideways, is just down marginally. And so, the reason I said it's nutty is because I think most people are expecting the Fed is going to cut rates at the September meeting. I think expectations were building that they were going to do a 50 basis point cut. That seems now it's being dialed down to 25 basis points or potentially no cuts. And also the expectations you're going to have 3 cuts this year. And so I think the CPI and the PPI numbers as we approach the next Fed meeting is going to be really important. The second thing that's really interesting to me is just crude oil markets, right? Crude oil has been had to look back 2 weeks ago. We were like $70, $71 a barrel. We got down to as low as 62 yesterday. We're now around $64 per barrel. And some of the stuff that we've seen from the EIA, the IEA has been pretty bearish. OPEC has been pretty bullish on their outlook for 2026. But markets are not moving on that today. What markets are moving on is what we're going to talk about today is what's going to happen on Friday in Alaska. Is Putin going to agree to a ceasefire? If he agrees to a ceasefire, then what are the terms going to be? If he does that mean crude oil prices go lower? If he doesn't, does that mean crude prices go higher because there's a bunch of stiff sanctions? So I think the markets are dealing with that right now. So things could look a heck of a lot different when we walk in on Monday morning with the crude oil markets. And so we look forward to talking to you on that on next Tuesday's podcast, but we'll hand it back to you, Maynard.
Awesome. Well, we had scheduled this. We were excited to talk with you, Senator and Jack, about the conference, and we still are. September 12th, you're having your 11th annual Energy Symposium. You're going to be covering a lot of great topics and showcasing all the capabilities that are present there at the university and in the center. It just so happens there's a little meeting happening in Alaska tomorrow. And we couldn't, we had to think to ourselves, gosh, we really need to think about this one and at least ask you, Senator, how you're thinking about that meeting. What's the right way to have reasonable expectations about it? It's certainly going to create some drama, some pictures, some sound bites. That's all we know for sure. But how are you thinking about that meeting tomorrow?
Well, Maynard, I think you've really programmed a beginning to look at that. I think the president, first of all, is much more realistic about Vladimir Putin now than he was at the beginning of his term. And I think he is not going to be patient anymore. I do think that he is lowering expectations, and also rightly, because it's just Vladimir Putin and the president, and you still have to deal with Zelensky, of course, and then the EU, which is also very engaged in trying to keep Ukraine free and sovereign. So I think the expectation is that there will be a ceasefire. Now, will it be a full ceasefire, or will Putin still try to drag it out with some limited ceasefire? I think the president will not be happy with that, but I think there's a sort of a nugget of hope that I see that they are planning to have a joint press conference at the end of this meeting, which must mean that they are somewhat in agreement on the outcome. And the outcome for President Trump is a ceasefire. He wants to stop the killing. He's very clear about that. And I think that that could be then a stepping point toward having Ukraine, President Zelensky, meet with Putin and then inform the key leaders of the EU and Europe also to make sure that all of the issues are on the table. I think the Europeans have been very proactive in their red lines, and of course, President Zelensky has as well. They know that there's going to have to be some give and take, but there are some key points that really, when it gets to the point of negotiating, that the Europeans are going to want, and of course that Zelensky will want. So I think this is really just a setting of the stage for another meeting. And I have a bit of hope that the fact that they are meeting and that they are planning a press conference at the end may mean that we can see this slaughter stop for a while and the real negotiations to begin.
Do you think, Senator, because in a lot of ways it seems like this meeting kind of surprised all of us. We weren't making progress, and then suddenly this meeting crops up. You referenced it. It seems like one of the things that really changed over the last few months is Trump's attitude towards Putin and sort of increasing lack of patience. So he kind of changed his tune, and then also the administration started turning back towards ways to make Russia, sanctions, and like the Indian oil sanctions. So the administration started moving in that direction. And then the last one, it just sort of seems like the pain has gone up in Russia. So maybe the desire to do something. I don't want to be guilty of too optimistic thinking here, but is that how you see the landscape has changed here?
Most certainly the secondary sanctions. I think I'm going to give credit to the United States senators right now. 85 of them signed on to a secondary tariff on any country that is buying oil from Russia. That is significant. And that gave President Trump the leeway to say, I'm not going to have 50 days to look at. I'm looking at 10, Mr. Putin. And I think that came about because the Congress really pushed that, showing a big bipartisan vote was there for the taking. And I think President Trump sent Mr. Witkoff to meet with Putin and say, look, 85 senators have said, we're on this. And that, I think, really started things turning. I think India stepped up and said, well, we're not going to be cowed by that. But India did not want 100% tariff on every export to the United States. And then, of course, the question of China came in, and President Trump is trying to keep that separate for now. But I think he would have no problem bringing China in, India in. The Senate has already spoken. The House is ready to go. It's bipartisan in both chambers. So I think we're speaking with one voice right now. And I think you have pinpointed what started it. And I would say the seriousness of the secondary tariffs and the support of Congress was significant.
I'm so glad you highlighted that, because we don't talk enough about bipartisan moments, and honestly, the key that this one had in maybe shaping Putin's impressions. What a great story. You know, it's not over yet, but you know, let's kind of celebrate a nice moment.
That's true. Just to segue though, because what we're talking about is energy, and I want to say that this kind of turmoil in the world, with adversaries that are so heavily invested in technology and defense and security, I think energy and our symposium that I know you're going to talk about with Jack Balagia as well, we've got to have sufficient reliable energy if we're going to be the leader of the free world and push against adversaries and others who would help Russia with this devastating war. So I think sufficient affordable energy is going to be the key to the economic success of America and our geopolitical security.
Well, maybe that's a great place to jump in with you, Jack. Now, I was tempted. You're the former general counsel of Exxon. You've done a lot of negotiations in your life. I was tempted to ask you to comment on some of these global negotiations going on. Maybe we'll get that out of you as we go. But as you've thought about the symposium this year, and I mentioned it's your 11th annual, what struck you about, we need to have the following things on the menu, we need to kind of construct it this way? Like, what's been the team's planning going into September?
Well, Maynard, the first thing we wanted to do was line up a sort of a highlight, a keynote speaker, and we were able to do that. Darren Woods, who's the chairman and CEO of ExxonMobil, has agreed to be our honoree this year and also lead off the symposium discussion on the morning of Friday the 12th. So grabbing a big keynote like that was probably our most important goal and effort. And listen, you just heard why K. Bailey Hutchison is so very important to the success of this center. We couldn't have gotten him without her. She did. I think she did the final negotiation and got him to come. So we're really excited.
Well, Jack, we totally understand that, because we have a rule around here: what Senator Hutchison asks for, she gets. Like, we don't negotiate. You know?
No, stop right there. Jack Balagia went personally and asked Darren Woods to come, and frankly, it is all Jack. And I was so pleased because, you know, that is a very important part of our economy is oil and gas. And Darren Woods is leading the effort in a lot of innovative ways, which I know Jack is going to bring out. Jack is going to actually do a fireside chat with Darren Woods. And I think a lot of his creativity beyond just oil and gas is going to come out. And Jack deserves 100% of the credit for nailing him early on to come in and let us give him the award for outstanding leadership in energy, which he certainly deserves.
And he follows a long line of great energy leaders in that role. As the senator knows, Rex Tillerson received the award. Jim Mulva received the award. Jeff Hildebrand, Vicki Hollub. So we've got a great list of former honorees that I know Darren's going to be proud to follow. So anyway, getting our keynote was very important. And then the other topics Maynard, really sort of came about in discussions with our academic directors on campus, our leaders in the engineering school, the law school, the business school, and the geoscience school. And the topics really were pretty obvious. I mean, obviously, AI is very important. Data centers are very important. What the outlook for energy is going to look like in the future in the next 25 years, that was very important. That's a very obvious topic. And I think you're leading that discussion, which we're very proud to have you do that. Foreign policy, you know, when you have somebody like Senator K. Bailey Hutchison leading the charge, foreign policy is a great topic. And Senator Hutchison invited Heather Wilson, who currently is the president of UT El Paso, to be on that panel. President Wilson is a former congressperson. Senator, I can't recall exactly, but I think foreign policy was one of her strengths, or national security was one of her strengths. And then we have a topic on national security itself. And that is the topic that the senator is going to discuss, along with Bobby Chesney, who is the former head of the Strauss Center at the University of Texas and is now the dean of the law school. So we've got a great lineup. And then one other thing I want to mention, I mean, there's a lot of great stuff on this program, but one of the things I'm kind of proud of is we're going to have a panel of energy reporters. We've got Rebecca Elliott from the New York Times to speak. We've got
Russell Gold,
who's probably one of the leading energy writers in America today. And they're all going to be, that panel is going to be led by none other than Evan Smith. So I've got a lot of high hopes and excitement for that panel as well.
I'm so glad you mentioned that one, because it does really stick out as a really important topic, which you know, I guess you might say is, how is energy covered in the news? How is it reported? How does the public learn about all the interesting and complicated pieces of energy? Maybe just expand a little bit on that one, like, because you'll also have students there, and I think that's something that we're always thinking about, is how are up and coming talented people learning about the energy system?
Well, you know, unfortunately, and this is, I'm going to state the obvious here, but the energy discussion has become just as divisive as so many of the more traditional discussions we have in this country. And, you know, picking sides and picking flavors that are going to succeed or not succeed. I think it's important that we hear from the people who are covering the industry how they try to keep that from showing up in their reporting. Because if we can't have objective reporting on energy, then I think it's a real disservice to not only us as Americans, but to the future of our energy security. So having an honest discussion about how that's covered is incredibly important. And I'm really excited that these people have agreed to come in and talk about that.
Maybe while we're on the topic of the audience, I mentioned the college students. Give us a feel. As I recall, Jack and Senator, you guys get something like 500-600 people. It's a lot of attendees, but give us a sense for who comes and kind of how you see the impact of the conference beyond, you know, just the day itself.
Really, it is the leaders in the industry that are coming to learn what's new in either regulatory policy, what's new coming up. And we've had some really amazing panels. We had one that was talking about using sequestration of carbon to take out all of the water and turn it into rocks and use the rocks for highway building. That came out of one of our symposia. We started talking about small nuclear reactors several years ago, before it became something that was a reality. And Maynard, what we're going to be talking about in the future is right there at the University of Texas. We're going to talk about the small nuclear reactor, which the University of Texas is building with Abilene Christian College, as well as Texas A&M and Georgia Tech. And the computational computer that we have at UT is doing a twin digital small nuclear reactor, so that there's going to be, when this is finished, the template for anyone to come in and use this twin to set up a small nuclear reactor anywhere in America. And these are the things that technology is adding that we want to cover in the symposium. And we, you were talking about some of the people who are coming, and we hope that people from here will go on our website and look at the program and sign up to come September 12th. We've got Robert Kaplan, the former president of the Dallas Fed, who's now vice chairman of Goldman Sachs. He's going to give a geopolitical economic view of the importance of energy. And we've got people like Jim Breyer Capital, coming to talk about funding some of these research projects that are being done to be able to have more access to energy. So we do have a lot of energy leaders. We do have academics and students, because we have an energy minor at the University of Texas that encompasses all the different careers that students can have in energy, and we want to give them a flavor for it. So our KBH Center runs this energy minor that has courses in geosciences, engineering. We're going to be putting the computer building of the SMR in Abilene as one of those components. Of course, treks to Midland and out to the computer. We're just doing so many things that show the capability for a student to come into the energy career sphere and start thinking about the future and what they can do with careers in research as well as in investment.
It is so great what you have going on. Other universities are doing some things around energy, innovation, policy, of course. What type of interactions are you finding that you're getting from other academic organizations or think tanks? Like, do you feel a bit of a network coming together as other countries, other universities, either in the US or globally, reach out? Talk to us about some of those interactions.
Well, that's a great question, Maynard. Let me answer it this way. There are 30 different energy organizations on the University of Texas campus. Our main goal right now is interacting with those entities and trying to collaborate with them and build our own brand within that community. My hope is that we are going to at some point become in addition to putting on our seminar, also becoming a voice on national and state energy policy. And I think once we get to that step, then meeting with these other energy centers outside the University of Texas campus will be one of our goals. But that would be a great opportunity for us to not only build our brand, but to enhance our ability to be a trusted resource for the energy industry, which is what we hope we are and what we really want to be.
And also, Maynard, just to add, you know this, but we are unique in that our energy center at UT encompasses 4 schools. So it's the School of Law, School of Business, McCombs School of Business, the Engineering School, Cockle School of Engineering, and then the Jackson School of Geosciences. So we are covering all of the potential careers in energy, unlike any other academic energy center in America, because our goal, our mission is to show all of the opportunities in energy that students can grab on to what interests them and then hone in on. Like in our energy minor, we just show them the options, and then they can go in and do a major in one of these areas where they want to learn more to be more productive. So I think our uniqueness is making a difference in creating an energy minor, and with the 4 schools included, And I think, as Jack said, we could have a consortium of other energy centers and probably add to each other. But right now, I think we stand as the most unique. And like if a student anywhere in America decided that they were interested in energy, they ought to be able to come to the University of Texas and get the introduction into so many exciting energy careers, from science to geology to policy, from the law school, because uh, uh, our state regulatory regime is so good, really, for production. It's very pro-business, pro-production, pro-creativity, and then, of course, the business school to learn how to finance and run a company. That's so important. So many of our oil company executives come out of the business school, but they also have been interested in the engineering side or the geosciences side.
Yeah, Senator, the thing I think we're all guilty of at some point in time is when we think of energy, we think of oil and gas, right? I mean, and it really isn't just oil and gas anymore. It's electricity, it's, nuclear, it's just everything. And there's a lot of good things going on, but just really on the oil and gas side, I think, Trump ran with this drill baby drill type of policy. And if you look at what's going on, in the U.S. rig count, if you listen to the Dallas Fed survey last month, I mean, executives are really down on the future of oil and gas here in the second half of this year into 2026. I guess my question for you is, I mean,
Down on, they think, less activity.
yeah, less activity and
production.
just, and less that the president's in our corner. And I guess my question would be is, what are you hearing from Washington, D.C.? What are you hearing from that standpoint of, I mean, like I said, we can't look at oil and gas, energy just in oil and gas terms. We got to look at it, LNG, oil and gas, natural gas, electricity. All those look good in aggregate. But what is just about the oil side of and the gas side? I mean, how are people in Washington, D.C. sort of, where are they right? Where were they 3, 4, 5 months ago? Where are they today? And where do you think they're going to be sort of into next year if oil prices do come under pressure like people think they will?
Yeah, yes, it's such a good observation, because this administration has put together the key leaders in the different areas of regulation and policy in the energy sector. And I think we are having to build back after the pause on export of LNG. I think then you had the Keystone XL pipeline closed right at the beginning of the last administration, and then you had this quote pause, which was a killer for export of LNG. So companies didn't invest. They didn't invest in getting more natural gas. They didn't invest in, you couldn't get even a permit to expand a refinery. You couldn't get a permit to put in any kind of a new pipeline. And we lost the Keystone XL, which was so important. And all of the clearances had been done. We could have been exporting to our European allies when we were telling them, don't buy oil and natural gas from Russia, buy it from America. And then the administration closed the effort to export. So now we're having to build back. And I think this administration is cooperating together, the Department of Energy, the Department of Commerce, the Department of, the different regulatory agencies, FERC, and they're all working together now in concert to get the regulatory morass solved so that you could start getting more pipeline capacity, but it will take time, more refinery capacity, but it will take time. But we have the capability and we've got the resources. We have the natural gas and oil from Permian Basin as well as East Texas that would keep America totally independent in energy, which is what we need right now. We need U.S. independence in energy so that we can do all the things we're going to need to do to perfect our AI and our technology with the supply of energy. And there's going to be a little bit of a rebuilding, and that's going to happen during this year. But I think then everyone believes that we will start a lot more drilling, a lot more capacity created for both oil and the LNG. And you got to build the LNG facilities on the Gulf Coast too. And I'm going to be on a program this next week for a PBS program with Joe Manchin and Scott Tinker to talk about what we've lost and what we need to get back to create that energy independence.
Senator, just to jump around a little bit, I was thinking just your NATO experience. The other two things, there's been a lot of things changing, but two things stand out in the geopolitics and international security realm. One is that NATO does really seem to be unified in a way that I'm not sure you can tell us when it was last quite unified like this, but that session with Trump in the meetings there, the last meeting where it was clear that people were not only unified, I mean, they were honestly going out of their way to be complimentary to Trump, which is not something we've seen. So the NATO unification is pretty amazing. And also the bombing of Iran was quite an event. I know something in your career, you must have debated that and been in on discussions on that, a gazillion times. Do you mind commenting on those two aspects of the landscape right now and how important they are?
I do think that, first of all, the Europeans see that this is a president who is going to say what he wants to do and that he will follow through and do it. And I think the bombing of the nuclear facilities in Iran it was so well received in Europe, because when I was at NATO is when we dropped out of the JCPOA, and the Europeans all stayed in, and they wanted to keep talking to Iran to try to make sure that they would come back into compliance. And I think they were relieved, because there is no question that Iran was definitely, if not already there, close to getting that nuclear weapon. And everyone knew they had the ballistic missiles to put a nuclear weapon on. And so I think that turned Europe much closer to understanding that we had a president who was just going to take care of it. And then on top of that, they saw, of course, what was happening with Russia and Ukraine, and how years of kind of dabbling around and not giving Ukraine the tools to win, just to have a stalemate, which was just killing Ukraine. Then I think they saw that they needed to do more. They agreed to do more, to their credit. And they also now believe that Trump will be the protector that America has always been, but wanting to have more buy-in from the Europeans, who have economies that are as good as ours, and they should step up. And I think they have a more realistic view now of what a partnership really is. And I think that made an impression on President Trump. I think he looks more favorably on the importance of NATO, because having 32 allies that have all of our common goals and our common risks is a whole lot better than America facing any of our adversaries alone. And I think the president sees that, because he sees Europe standing up. And I think Europe is standing up, to their credit, because they know that President Trump is going to take the bold action when it's necessary.
Anything you'd tell us on, I was imagining if President Trump was here in the seat and he said, what do you guys think I should do tomorrow? I know that's ridiculous in so many ways, but what would be, you've seen so many of these high-powered summits where two leaders get together. I guess it's been publicized that they're going to try to get together, just the two of them. I assume a couple translators. I don't know, but what do you think? What is your observation about when you have meetings like this? How do you get the details right? How do you get the setting right? How do you make it conducive to the most positive outcome? Are there any tricks of the trade you might share with us?
Well, there's a lot more that's going back and forth. Like, this week, the president has had a meeting every day on some aspect. First, he sent Witkoff to meet with Putin. Then he talked to all of the European leadership, talked to Zelensky. And he's done something like that every day to see where everyone is and what's important. And Jack would be one who would also have been able to set up important meetings with the CEO of Exxon and a head of state. You want to know what can be accomplished. You don't want to have a meeting where nothing is accomplished. And I think if Putin came in and tried to just mess around and delay, as he has done in the previous two phone calls that he's had with the president, if he tried to do that again, I think the president would blow up and leave. And I think Putin knows that. But I also think that most of the time, a president wouldn't have a meeting that wouldn't have a result, and know pretty much from all the pre-talks what that common result would be. And there's no doubt that Putin's going to want to be looking for some saving of face. And I think the president will try to give him that, as long as the president gets what he really wants, which is a ceasefire right now, set a meeting later.
Do you think this thing, and Jack, you have been part of so many of these negotiations and meetings with heads of state and such, does this set up in a really nice way for Trump, which is if he goes and he gets a ceasefire, he wins. If he goes and he doesn't like what he hears and he storms off, yes, he doesn't get a ceasefire, but he looks like, I was a tough guy. I'm frustrated. He kind of, is it set up in a nice way for him, Jack? What do you think?
Well, I've not been involved in any negotiations with anybody that operates quite like the president does. So I have to give you that caveat. Normally in these sort of meetings, a lot of the work has already been done, and all the stuff has sort of preliminarily been agreed to. I'm just not sure how storming out of the meeting might impact the result. It might work. And the senator can speak to that better than I can, but these are not the typical negotiations, it seems to me, that public companies have with heads of state. It's just not the same sort of relationship.
Well, what will happen if the alternative is to blow up and leave? There will be tariffs that will come down while he is in the plane going back to Washington. That's my guess. Mm-hmm. He is not going to blow up and walk out with no penalty. Mm. He said there will be consequences, and he has shown that when he says there are going to be consequences, there are. And that's what happened with Iran. And I think it will happen with Putin if he thinks that he could possibly come over here and mess around like he has done, and where the president has called him out.
Do you think, Senator, this is so fascinating? We've Got to make sure we talk enough about the conference because it's big. I'm excited. I'm coming. I got one more question here, which is, do you think if you were advising Putin or assessing what Putin has done, it kind of looks like Putin missed his window because he could have struck an early deal. Trump would have been so happy that he was getting to deliver on an early deal. Putin probably could have struck maybe a better deal in the first few months than he can strike now. I don't know if that's true or not, but does it feel like Putin overplayed his hand a little bit, Senator?
Sure. I think you're totally on it. I think he missed a window where the president was giving him every benefit of the doubt. That was so clear early on. And I think Putin misplayed it. I think that he is going to get a much firmer stance. I mean, the president's already put it out there, and it has legs that he's going to put secondary tariffs on the people that buy oil from Russia. And I can guarantee you that Modi doesn't like it, and he's putting on a front, but he doesn't like it. And China knows it's coming also. And I think the president will come down hard. And I think he has to. I think he has to say, I've given you every opportunity, and that's not gonna, I'm not doing it anymore. And if he blows up, it will be followed immediately with the strong tariffs. And I do think your point is right. I think that what will come out of the eventual negotiation will not be as much as Putin. Putin was asking for property that he hadn't even taken. You know, there's what's called a bulwark in the Donetsk region that Putin has tried to take down, and the Ukrainians have held firm. And he was trying to get that in the original proffer so that he would have the ability to do more easily what he hasn't been able to do, which is go all the way in to Ukraine again. So I think he is very much. I think the cards are in favor of President Trump, but also the Ukrainians now, much more so than they would have been. There'll still be, each one's going to have to give some, that's for sure, but it's not going to be nearly as lopsided as I think it might have been.
Maynard, let me tell you what's really cool about this. 4 weeks from tomorrow, the KBH Energy Center is having a symposium at which this very topic will be discussed by you and by Senator Hutchison and by Heather Wilson and by Bobby Chesney. And so once this occurs, once the meeting happens tomorrow, 4 weeks from tomorrow, anybody who is attending our symposium will have the chance to find out firsthand what is the significance of what happened tomorrow. So I think that's very exciting. It's very fortunate that we've got this topical agenda that will actually cover this issue, and with two of the people on this phone call involved in that discussion.
Well, and it's so fascinating, Jack, because that'll be awesome. And also, who knows what we're talking about 4 weeks from now? Like, how do you find, Jack, this keeping up with information? The flows of things are so fast these days. You're right there with so much to keep up with right in your own neighborhood. How are you keeping up with a world that is moving at a dizzying pace?
Well, Maynard, it requires a lot of reading, believe me, a lot of reading, a lot of sitting in front of the computer. And the good news is I have time to do that now. And it's certainly the primary focus of what I'm up to in my post ExxonMobil years. In addition to teaching at the law school, reading what's going on in the energy business is a principal part of my day.
How did, just as a personal question, Jack, you had this great career at ExxonMobil, your general counsel, that had to be fascinating. And then you've had, a new lease on life at the university, first as an adjunct professor and now as the executive director. What's been your personal passion to change course and do all this?
Well, I would have been glad to stay at ExxonMobil, but they had a mandatory retirement age, and I reached that age. And fortunately, the university and the dean of the law school invited me to come join my friend John Beckworth and start teaching oil and gas law, which I did. And I have always been involved at the senator's request in the KBH Center as one of the executive council members. And so the relationship between oil and gas law and the center has always been there. And listen, it's important. It's important. I mean, look how engaged Senator Hutchison is. She's been retired for a few years now, and I think anybody in our position is going to say, if you want to continue to be active, that's the way to help stay young. And I will tell you, having the opportunity to work with her is a great reward, and one that I'm glad that I was willing to do.
Jack,
Yeah.
I got to ask you, since AI is on the agenda, and law is one of the places where people talk a lot about AI being helpful, reading lots of things, helping with contracts. Any comments on AI that you'd offer up, either on law or anything else?
That's a topical question, Maynard, because I got an email from the law school yesterday discussing how professors are supposed to give exams these days. Obviously, if you're going to do a take-home exam, you have to worry about students using AI to help in those exams. It is a very big concern, I think, in education today, and I'm seeing it firsthand from some of the emails that I'm getting from the law school. But I'm also seeing how, excuse me, AI is transforming the legal business as well, because in the old days, as you know, you had tons of associates out doing research and writing, and it is amazing what these AI products can do now. Now, of course, there are problems with it. You have to make sure they're not citing cases that don't exist. But which
I hate it when that happens.
I hate it when that happens. I do too.
Man.
But I think it's transforming the business. I really do.
Mike, let me turn to you for any last questions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to go back to this meeting tomorrow, Senator. I think what struck me is it seems like this could be a win-win-win in a case of we get a ceasefire tomorrow, and it's okay, that'll be fantastic. But if we don't and Trump runs out, that feels like a sort of a Reagan Gorbachev moment where basically he storms out and then eventually the wall comes down. I mean, that's really interesting to me. I guess my question would be is, let's assume tomorrow we do get a ceasefire. What are the steps afterwards? How quickly does a meeting happen with Zelensky? Does Trump potentially participate in it? How would you think that would unfold?
Well, I think that will be very much open. I think he will try, if they walk away with the promise of another meeting. They're already beginning to frame where another meeting would be, and Zelensky, Putin, and possibly, but not yet clear, that there might be some of the other European leaders. They're talking about it very quickly. And I think, that means probably in the next week or so. And I think, as Jack had mentioned earlier, usually all these things are pretty well set. And it's not that there's agreement right now, but I think we'll know what Putin is asking for, what Zelensky is saying he will do and not do. And then I think the Europeans will have some say in this, but I think they'll probably go through Zelensky more than on their own. But it's in their great interest to have this settled in a way that there will be security reliance on the Europeans, as well as something from America, in the way of a protection against future incursions into Ukraine by Russia. And I think that's going to have to bring in the Europeans, because right now they are the ones that are really supporting the Ukraine. They're buying the weapons from us, but they're providing the weapons to Ukraine. So they'll have to be part of a security commitment. And I think we will to some extent as well. So I think that will happen quickly, and it'll be very important that Putin not violate a ceasefire. And he has even this week been attacking Ukraine. Not last night, but the night before and before. And so he's going to have to be watched very carefully on this. Now, they did have a prisoner swap just today and yesterday. So that's good, a prisoner swap between Zelensky and Putin. So that's a good sign. And I think, though, it's going to be very important for Putin not to do something tonight before the meeting tomorrow. I think that would just be very inadvisable. And so I think it'll happen as quickly as they can make the arrangements and start settling on what the issues are, hopefully next week or the week after.
Senator, were you surprised they chose Alaska? Was that an interesting, if you had been saying, hey, where should we meet? It's kind of an interesting place. It obviously used to be Russian territory. I don't know if there's any symbolism or if it's just logistically in the middle. But were you surprised that they chose that place?
Well, I was surprised, but not. I think it made a lot of sense because, Putin is a war criminal, and that The Hague has pronounced, and several of the countries in Europe have a warrant out for his arrest. So I think, and then he was saying, well, maybe Saudi Arabia. That didn't really, it could have happened. I mean, Saudi Arabia has been fairly neutral, but I think Alaska makes a whole lot more sense for us because we have security, and we would know it'd be, I think, a whole lot less risk. So, and of course, we bought Alaska from Russia. So,
well, and the thing we learned, the U.S. could have picked up Greenland around the same time, but didn't. So, darn it.
Boy, I tell you, President Trump regrets that greatly, obviously. But I think that that would have been a good add to our land, but we didn't probably see all the things that were going to happen when that was a possibility.
You'd have had to have been a real estate person with a lot of vision to get it in way back then. But well, as we wrap up, thank you again. We really so appreciate your time and the ability, Senator, to be able to ask you these questions in this format and in others. We always appreciate your wisdom. And Jack, we're super excited about the conference and everything you guys have going. We'll certainly publicize that and send the links and maybe send the information about the miner in our community. But any last thoughts, Jack, as people, now you got to tell me one more thing, Jack. What's the game on Saturday? Because UT for the first time is ranked #1 going into the season.
What's surprising about that to me is that is the first time they've been ranked #1 preseason.
Yeah, I know. I wondered if I had that right, but now that you've confirmed
right.
it, yeah.
You have it exactly right. It is, we're playing UT El Paso, which is the reason President Heather Wilson is going to be in town and be on our panel. So that was very fortuitous. And the senator saw that coming 6 or 8 months ago, maybe even longer, and arranged for that to be a reality. So we do like to do it on football weekends. We find that it helps increase the attendance. But I will tell you, Maynard, we have had no trouble filling that to the brim every time we have one of these symposiums. We had up to 500 people last year. I think we expect the same number of people this year. I think it's going to be huge. And at some point, I think the registration is going to be cut off.
Well, It's a great thing you're doing. We're pleased to be part of it, and we can't wait. Maybe I'll drag this guy with me. Come on, Bradley, let's go to Austin.
That would be great. And we're so grateful for your participation in the symposium over the years. You're an outstanding resource. Thank you.
It's been great having you because you've tied it all together. You have so much information in all these sectors of energy. And so we're so glad you're coming back. We want you always back.
You got it. Well, Senator, thank you. Jack, thank you. And everybody, mark your calendar, September 12th. Thank you.